I guess when we say why acting, I think it's that. It's like it's a way in order for you to get to the center of who you are if you can. If you can use it that way, it pushes you to get as close to the person you want to be, the person that you are, that you're afraid of being as well. Not just playing other characters, but actually finding the center of the person
You.
of you.
Welcome to this SAG-AFTRA Foundation conversation with the SAG nominees for female actors in a leading role. My name is Jack Smart. I'm the movie staff writer, People Magazine. I am joined by Pamela Anderson, Cynthia Erivo, Mikey Madison, and Demi Moore. How are you all today?
Hello, Jack. Thank you. Great.
Lovely. How are you?
I'm so great. I'm so great because I'm talking to you all. Congratulations on your nominations and all the recognition you've gotten for your very, very worthy performances. We're going to get into it today. I'm going to start with a simple question, but a big question, which is why acting? And I want to encourage you all to jump in whenever and respond to each other or ask each other burning questions. And anything that anybody says resonates with you, please chime in. But I feel like we're going to get four very different answers. So I'd love to hear from anyone who would like to start. Why acting? Why do you love this craft?
Well, I think acting is a survival mechanism. I think that we're all doing it all the time, and to be able to make a career of that. I mean, if you're depending on how you've gotten into it, if it was some kind of trauma early in your life that you've overcome, or being at the actor's studio, there's a different way to get there. And I feel like this is just, SAG is not, SAG members are not just movie stars. They're young people living in apartments, sharing a plate of French fries, going on auditions, raising a family, or, just doing the best they can and still having that dream that we share. And so, I mean, this is the dream, so you don't want to take it for granted. And I guess that's how I feel about it. There's no perfect way to do anything, and everyone has a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Very true. I think there's why acting? Well, first, why not? But I think there's also a part of it that is about connecting with others, also in service to connecting with oneself. I think the opportunity of exploring other characters also allows you to discover different parts of you in ways that maybe you didn't know yet of who you are, but that touch a place in you. I always feel like there's an interesting kind of parallel between artist and our person that kind of, that merges with this. And I too, Pam, like you, feel like there was a part of it that I had intention for, but stumbled into. And a big part of it started not knowing anything about acting, not the formality of it, not the technical aspect, not from a training perspective, not a theater background, but really of a sense of a desire of community and connection.
I really relate to what you're saying, Demi. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and I think really what drew me towards acting and just filmmaking in general is the connection and the intimacy that you get to share with someone else, the different characters you explore. I've always had this like big craving for adventure and emotion, but I've always been like very shy. And so I think in some way I saw acting as a way to be able to experience all these different emotions, all these different connections, but sort of under the safety net of a character or of a film. And I do feel like I've been able to live so many different lives, experience so many different things, so many, the highs of your emotions and the lows and everything in between. And it's been through a character. And I think it's like really brought me out of my shyness a little bit. So yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about a lot. Like why, yeah, just that craving towards like connection and community also, like you're saying. Like, yeah.
I love that idea too of shyness, because I feel like I hid my shyness by being extroverted. That became actually another character for me, hiding my shyness so that somehow I could be okay by being another character.
I think when it comes to acting, for me, I think it was a bit of a calling. I didn't really think there was anything else for me to do, but I had literally no blueprint for me to follow. My family who knew anything about it, I was like this kid from South London, and no one really talked about acting, about getting into acting, or where to go or who to talk to. And so for me, I kept stumbling upon things that put me in the right direction to be there. I spent most of my life in theatre because that was what was available to me. And I just wanted to do as much as I possibly could, right down to trying to work at a theatre to maybe get the opportunity to be on a stage, because that felt like where I belonged. It felt like that was a place where I could be the most myself and also play all these other characters and live these other lives that I didn't think I could live for myself. There's something really special about being in a theatre and within those spaces, because it's where the rebels go. It's where the people who feel odd, who don't fit in, sort of congregate, especially us musical theatre kids who most of us are sweet little queer kids who don't fit in anywhere, who get made fun of. And then when we get to play our characters, we feel larger than life. And then to be able to do that on screen and to find out what that meant, it took me a long time to feel comfortable with doing that. And for me, that really was what acting was. It was a culmination of different things, whether it be escape or just finding a place where I fit, where I could do the things that I loved doing, where I could sing or play a queen or be a boy or whatever it was, that's what I was doing. Yeah. I think I love what you said there to me about acting. Well, why not?
Yeah.
If that's the thing that is beckoning for you, well, why not listen to that? Yeah.
Yeah, because I too, nobody in my family, there was nothing that I had as a blueprint or a reference point, except, and which is one of the things I was thinking about, how so much of my learning came from watching others, like just seeing what this is. Like the idea, I think back to being a kid in the very early parts, and the excitement of discovery, of possibility, of just what is this? What I didn't know why, but I felt, as you said, a calling is such a beautiful way of expressing it, like this pull towards something.
It's so interesting because I started going to college, to university, because I didn't know that there was a way. I didn't know that you could go to school for it. I had no idea that was even a thing. Nobody gave it to me as an option or even a suggestion. So I started going to university to just do anything that had anything to do with performance. So I started with like a music psychology. That's what I wanted to do. I was like, if I can do a music psychology degree, I've been singing at like, I don't know, clubs, and I'm backing vocalists for a person, and it's like an open mic night here or whatever it is, and I'm doing all of this stuff. And I thought, well, I understand that. So maybe I'll do something that has anything to do with something, with music, with performance. And when I went, it just wasn't right. It wasn't the thing that connected with me the way I needed it to. and I quit and went and did like a young actors company. All of this came to me really late. I don't think I started doing anything until I was 19, 20. I went to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. I went to school when I was 20 because someone said, go and train. And when she said go and train, I really had no idea what she meant. She told me what school to go to, and I said, I don't know what that place is. What is RADA? And she spelled it out for me. And then I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get into this place. The first word is royal. I'm not getting in. What
Do you feel like that gave you?
I think it.
Do you think it gave you a foundation in a way that was grounding?
Going to school?
Yeah.
I think it tore the carpet right out from under me. I think that I did not fit that place. And I stumbled upon a person who really saw me in that place, who gave me a gem that I carried around with me after I left. Those places aren't necessarily made for a person who doesn't have things handed to them. And I was that kid. I put myself through it. Like, I worked whilst I was there, which was insane because it's supposed to be 9 to 5, but it's really 9 to 9. And then you work a weekend at the same time. Ooh. And I was doing whatever I could do. So I would finish one job and then go and sing at night and then go back to the school the next morning and be asleep in a class, like just trying to figure it all out. But I met a teacher, and I think I've been lucky enough to meet these teachers along the way who just give me really wonderful gems that I can put in my little book and take with me. And this gem was about vulnerability. Up until that point, I was like a closed wall that wouldn't let anyone in. And she was like, that is something that you have to get rid of. And what your strong suit is to be vulnerable, like to be an open, to let your heart be on your sleeve, to not be so defensive, to not be so closed off. And that opened up a world of wonder for me when it came to discovering different characters and different people, because that's the road in which I sort of like went into. So I guess when we say why acting, I think it's that. It's like how it's also a way to get, it's a way in order for you to get to the center of who you are if you can. If you can use it that way, it pushes you to get as close to the person you want to be, the person that you are, that you're afraid of being as well. Not just playing other characters, but actually finding the center of the person of you to then, funnel the character through. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it's so interesting, the parallel of being an artist and our instrument being ourselves, our body, mind, soul.
Yeah.
Like, it's like we have to bring all of it there, all of it.
Yeah.
So wonderful. And in fact, I wanted to ask for those gems that Cynthia mentioned, this idea of like a piece of advice that sustained or inspired you maybe early on. And I'm thinking that could be like a teacher or a mentor, but it could also be, was there an artist that you admired early on, maybe an actress that you admired early on that gave a piece of advice that has continued to feed you as your career has evolved?
Gosh, it's hard to kind of pinpoint any one thing in a way, because I don't know.
The other way of asking the question is to say, if you could go back in time and give yourself that gem, what do you wish you'd known earlier?
I always found that, some of the people that told you can't do this, you can't do that, it's always kind of got me, the rebel in me thinking, no, I will, I'll prove you wrong. Or that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to start again or pick up where you left off. And those kind of things ring true to me. And I have obviously my favorite actors and people that I've watched and films that I love. But this living in the mystery of not knowing what's next and just having this really romantic life that is just drawing everything out of you. And to be in this group right now with these women is so exciting that it's, don't give up. I feel like that is the best advice. If you have something to give, there's a place for it in this world. It's just timing. The stars have to align. A little bit of magic is part of this business too.
Mm-hmm. I thought of something, and I've never said it before, but actually a couple of lovely actresses have said it to me who I love and admire. And it's not necessarily advice, or maybe it could be, but I think sometimes we forget that it is actually a really useful tool. And that's call me if you need me.
Mm.
I just think that it's just one of the kindest things to say to another person in your line of work. Call me if you need me. I'm here if you need me.
Mm.
And I think that I've not always been very good at using that, but when I have, it's really, really helped to hear from someone else and hear their point of view and just get a little bit of advice and sometimes talk about nothing has been really helpful. I think that's a really beautiful piece of advice. And what I tell my younger self, don't be so hard on yourself. Have a little bit more fun. I think all of it could go away tomorrow. So just be present for it now.
Mm.
That living in the mystery, Pamela said, that's such a good approach to acting.
Being okay with that.
Yeah. I love that, by the way, to live in the mystery.
You're living the mystery.
Yeah.
And that everyone.
I think your point, Cynthia, of, so often, we're on this path and we're forging, and there's old hangovers that aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily the truth, but this idea that we need to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah.
That we don't want to burden someone, that, and that kind of feeling of, not that we're weak, but that somehow this idea that we should already know versus this idea that the very nature of when we lean into someone is, it's like that idea that half of giving is receiving. And when you afford someone that opportunity to be of service to you, you are actually doing an act of giving. And, obviously it's much more comfortable if you're giving than being in need.
Yeah.
Never been like my favorite, but I have come to find the beauty in that. And, one of the things that I can really reflect and think about it for my younger self, I just so happened, because my youngest daughter and her fiance had never seen Ghost. I had not seen it in over 30 years.
Wow.
I watched it a couple of nights ago, by the way.
You did? And so I was like, oh no, there's no way. I'm not a big fan of watching myself in general. Don't know about you ladies, but I went and watched the second half, and I realized that the scared little girl in me, who was still so new, that I hadn't ever gone back to watch to even have a moment of appreciation. And so I think there's a real sentiment for me that goes all the way into now, which is really appreciating where you're at every moment. Like I didn't have it all figured out, and I was afraid that somehow, but then I've never looked back to even see or acknowledge, and I actually, in all honesty, I don't know how I did what I did for that particular performance. And I think that's what scared me. I didn't know how I delivered. I don't know where it came from. And so that fear of like, oh my God, am I just faking it? Comes up, that part of us that can sometimes feel fraudulent. And the gift today is really being in the joy of the shadow side, in the joy of the failings, in the joy of the trial and error, because that is the discovery. That's what you were saying, Pamela, about that's like the mystery of like, I don't know where tomorrow goes, but right now is pretty whole and complete in a pretty beautiful way.
Yeah.
Like my time that I've had meeting and chatting and spending and texting with all of you is by far the greatest joy of this whole process. Like it really is. because that, when you talk about gems of others,
Yeah.
like those moments are what I feel like that's what I get. That's what I get to take with me, no matter what happens. Like that is with me. Seeing Mikey and going, oh my gosh, this is still so early for you. And yet this is so much, and feeling the compassion of like, wow, like how beautifully and elegantly you're, navigating, and knowing how overwhelming it is, and going, gosh, I want to reach out because I remember how naked I felt in these early days, and how important that is, that, that we are living in a time that is of celebration, not competition.
Oh, yeah. And that goes back to what you said about community, really enjoying and relishing that community. And for me, that, especially amongst women, is really important for me. And I also, you said something, Demi, about failing. And I had a mentor, acting coach type figure tell me years ago, maybe like 8 years ago or something, just give yourself permission to fail. Don't try to be perfect all the time. It's not possible. You can't be perfect as an actress. You have to embrace those other parts of yourselves, the ugly parts of yourselves, the vulnerable parts, and be messy. Don't be afraid to be weird or strange. And I think that that's really made me the actress that I am today, And if I were to go back, I would just reiterate that. Like, stop, don't try to be perfect. Be afraid, don't be afraid to fail, and, stop worrying so much about what you look like or your weight or all of those things, because as actors, like, we're just vessels for the character. Our body is our art. And the second that you step onto set, you are that character, and every part of you is who you're supposed to be in that moment. So, yeah.
I like to say striving for imperfection.
Mm.
Because I just think we look for these imperfect characters to play because they're more interesting.
So true. That is so true.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That
So much
is
more
so
fun
true.
to play. It's so much more fun to play someone who's just figuring it out, man. Like
Complex. It's our humanness.
Yeah.
It's like that humanness that we all go, yep, I see me there. That I'm there.
Relatability.
Yeah.
I had someone say to me once, when I was in a mode of like, perfectionism, do you know anyone that's perfect? And I said, no. Do you know anything that's perfect? And I said, no. And he said, well, why would you want to be no one and nothing?
Oh,
And I was like, oh shit. Okay. Yes, I get that. And, it is, look, that is the beauty, the flaws that we all have. That's what I was saying about, I like that idea of not just accepting the kind of the shadow sides or things where we might see it as judgment, but actually celebrating it.
Yeah.
As like all just the interesting, rich parts of us. Yes, sometimes maybe I am petty. Oh, sometimes maybe I am judgmental of myself. Ooh, how delicious is that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be, that's awful. I could say, ooh, I was so annoyed just now.
I love that. I love that. And I think that might be a perfect segue to asking you all about your characters in these roles, because I'm curious to know where you overlapped or where you found that personal connection where I love this idea, Cynthia, of I felt most myself. Mm-hmm. But then on the other hand, you're going in and you're engaging with these flaws, like you're all saying too, like the imperfections. Where did you find the imperfections in Shelley, the Last Showgirl, Elizabeth Sparkles, Elphaba Throp, and Anora, aka Annie? I'm curious, like, do you remember a moment when you first connected with the character or thought, this is me, I see my personal connection, I know how to play this person?
Well, I have a lot of empathy for the character. Sorry, go ahead.
Say again?
I said I had a lot of empathy for the character I was about to play, that I had so much sympathy for her, just being an artist and being a mother and having this love of nostalgia and the selflessness of being a parent and the selfishness of being an artist, and playing all of that at once made me think about my own life. Of course, I mean, there are parallels, but I felt like that was the jumping off point, that to be able to create a character is always the most fun, and to be able to not see yourself on screen sometimes is it's really exciting. I mean, I've never done that before. This is all new to me, but I really love to dive into that person who is just doing the best she can with the tools that she has. And I just loved her.
And I loved her too.
Thank you.
I think that Elphaba is sort of this allegory for otherness, and I think that most of my life has been that. And it's not something you sort of want to sort of wear as a badge, but the idea of walking into a space and being the only one there, or the only one who looks like you, or the only one who has your skin color, or that, like, that's like a visceral memory for me, like being in spaces where I look around and there's nobody who looks like me in a space. And I understood what that felt like. And then when you expand on what otherness can be, whether it's being queer or whether it's being, just what she has to deal with as someone who just isn't the same as anyone else. I think I just really understood what that felt like. And then you open it up and you dissect the relationships that she has to exist in, whether it's the father-daughter relationship, which for me was an immediate sort of understanding, because that rejection from a person who is supposed to love you was something that I understood immediately. And I think that what I wanted for her was to sort of harness the hope that she had in her. So I think someone like an Elphaba can be played for just the hurt and for just the loss, but actually what I have found is that the people who are the most hurt, the people who have a lot of hurt in them, are often the most hopeful, are often people who are seeking the most joy, and are driven as well. And so I think immediately I saw the defensiveness in the way she was doing. I saw how she would put the walls up and use comedy to hide how she was feeling. And then the idea that I would have the privilege of using music as well to navigate her emotions and to take us through, again, is something, because for me, music really is like a second language, if not my first, to be able to use my voice in that way. I was immediately sort of drawn to who this woman was, the idea that so many expectations had been placed on her, and so many reductions of who she could be had been also handed to her, which, I have walked through my life having people tell me what I can and cannot do. And to be able, and the parallels for me were right there, on the surface. Yeah.
Which is so amazing to be able to find parallels with like a green-skinned person flying through the air in a fantasy. Yeah, exactly. Mikey, same question for you, because I don't perceive you as anything like Anora. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I've been asked that before. People have said, like, are there any similarities? And I've always been very defiant in saying, no, I really, this is a woman who comes from a totally different universe than me. Everything about her life was completely foreign, and I had to learn it and experience it for the first time. And, I've recognized that we're more similar than I thought that we were. And there's also qualities about her that I think I envy, or that I wish I had. She has this amazing fighting spirit she's a true fighter in every possible way. I mean, she obviously she's a physical fight to her, but an emotional fight. She knows and is very clear about her place in the world. It's just other people that question it. And she is confident enough to fight for what she believes in. She's confident enough to fight for her marriage, to fight for this incredible life that she's been welcomed into. And, I think there have definitely been times in my life where I wish I stood up for myself more. I wish I fought more for myself. And through this character, I get to fight for her. And I just, I like Pamela, like you said, I fell in love with my character, and I loved her, and I wanted to fight for her. I wanted to do her justice in that fight. And yeah.
Beautiful. And Demi, speaking of weird universes that you inhabit.
Gosh, there were so many interesting things with this, obviously, that in reading this that I resonated with. But in particular, I think it was the violence that we can have against ourselves. That for me was a real anchor, because I felt, obviously the film takes everything to such extreme states, but at its core, at its real, the simplicity of it, that desire to be loved, to be seen, to be acknowledged. And I think the means in which we will go to compromise ourselves to get that in different ways. I think that it ironically, it touched on things that I feel like I experienced much more when I was younger, even though this was about someone who was aging out and being marginalized. But for me, that was the least new part of the whole story, was that, she was aging out in her career. For me, it was really because I don't look at her as a victim, except to her own self-imprisoning. And I think that for me I felt like something I had never really seen explored, which in this idea that, wow, if I could create a physical manifestation of what some of that violent internal dialogue looked like, what would that be? And I felt like kind of going through that kind of physical process and giving it almost a different language. It gave it a visual language of something that I think in different forms. Obviously, I feel like I related to her, even though I don't feel like I am her. She's but it took the little pieces of aspects that either I feel like I've touched or that I know or I've seen, that really allowed me to kind of step into that deeper place of uncomfortable intimacy with oneself. Because so much that I had no dialogue. So I had to find a way, because I didn't have my fellow actors very much to even be playing off of. So it was a very different approach with this, of really having to create and be in dialogue with myself in those scenes so that it felt alive for me all the time. But really at the crux is it was going to the places within me that I've certainly touched that have been the most cruel, the most harsh, the most unforgiving, the most raw and painful, and of great need. Like that need of validation that I had to kind of put myself, that compromised state, like for me was like, it's like almost being in a begging state, which for me, as somebody who's been on my own since I was 16 years old, is like, quite opposite of my general approach. But I think I knew her. I knew her. I had such a depth of compassion. I really like, I felt like I wanted to just wrap her up, and as a true good codependent and fixer.
Well, I love this. It sounds like a theme is emerging of like having compassion for your characters, even though they are flawed or because they are flawed, embracing the flaws in the character and celebrating those. And I think that's a smart tip for working actors watching this. It's funny you mentioned not having a scene partner for a lot of the movie to me, because I am also really curious to ask you guys what makes an ideal co-star. Like, how would you describe the ideal scene partner? And this can be a way to celebrate Margaret Qualley, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ariana Grande, or Yura Borisov, or whatever. But if there is an actor, a working actor watching this who would be lucky enough to work with you one day, what should they do? Like, what should they do on set that would make them a great co-star?
Oh, you have to. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is the ultimate co-star. She makes everybody wear name tags for the first couple days, and she carries gear. She feeds people. She does everything to make it work. She's a huge supporter of indie films too, and she does big films, little films, and she's just such a champion for women too. I mean, she just was incredible and fearless and fun to watch, unpredictable. I mean, it adds so much to a performance. Is obviously that's a team sport. You're all in it together.
Love that. Oh,
I might be biased because I'm waving Ari's flag. I loved it, but Ari, I have to say that, but this was Ari's first big film, and she walked onto that set like she had been doing this a really long time, like doing this particular art form a really long time. And I think the special thing about her is that she had the capacity and the compassion for everyone around her, which meant that it wasn't just the interaction in front of the camera, it was off camera. The big discussions that we have, and you ask what makes a really good co-star. It's the conversations that you have away from the screen, away from the camera, away from everyone else. If you're spending that much time with a person, there is a level of intimacy that you are pushed into immediately. And if you have the capacity to build on that away from the screen, all it will do is feed what you have on screen, regardless of whether your adversary's on screen or whether your best friend's on screen. To be able to know with just a blink of one eye that, she's not happy with this moment, or actually she might need a little bit of space here, or actually let me just ask, can we just do that again, because I know, like, we need to do this again, because I know that she might want to do it, just have a moment to try it again. Or actually, I'm just going to hold her hand because I know that this is what she needs right now. Or she's just going to, or she might give me space because she knows that's what. You start to learn each other's language. And it takes effort to learn another person's language. It takes effort to learn how another person functions and make room for that whilst you're also learning to function in this new space, because each set you walk on is a new space. It's a new set of surroundings that you haven't been in before. Even though you've been on a set before, this set is different from the last, from the last, from the last. And so if you can make some room for how you function on this particular set and room for someone else, then the journey that you have to go on together becomes a pleasurable experience, even in the hardest times, because you already, like, I love what you were saying, Pamela, about Jamie Lee Curtis walking around with snacks and gear and stuff. Like, there were times when it would be, she would literally come into my Easy Up with like a Tupperware box of blueberries, blackberries, and cashew nuts. Snacks for the day. Have that. You know what I mean? Knowing that this is going to be a big day, you're going to be running around, you're also in a corset, you can't eat a big meal, eat this today. Knowing that I have tea all the time. Hey, I bought some tea bags. Just have that. Me knowing that, oh, she needs black coffee. Her one is an iced black coffee every single day. It's what she has every day. And if it's not there, it should be, because we know it. We know it. It's a thing, even if she doesn't need it, it's a thing that helps her function. So if you can be there in the aid of how the person functions, it's a gift. And Ari was a gift for me in that, because she learned the language that I used when I was functioning on set and could tell immediately. And still, when we're running around, knows immediately, like, so, what's up? Should we have a sister chat right now? Do we talk right now? If you be there, genuinely be there for a person, I think that is what makes a wonderful co-star. And that Ariana is.
Because what I really hear you saying, Cynthia, that I think is absolutely such a depth of truth, which it's creating a sense of safety where you know someone is looking out for you as much as you're looking out for them. So then when it gets to the work, it's already elevated because you know they're watching for you. They've got that extra eye of comfort that, is, and just knowing somebody's feeling you.
Right.
Feeling the nuances of, because it's this is hard work, long days, but wonderful. But when you have the joy of someone like talking about Jamie, who's thinking about others, who's, and who's looking out for you, it is a whole different experience. You could not be more right about that. I mean, I felt like, obviously, Margaret and I were in very compromised situations. Yeah. And knowing, as we laid on cold tile floor, nude, right. and like going, hey, just move your leg a little bit. Like, oh, that would, like, I think that's better. Like, or can we get your towel over here? Can we get the robe? Like, just those little things where somebody's just seeing you beyond what the end game is. They're seeing the process and the person. It is everything. It's a generosity of spirit.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. This is excellent advice. I think we have to wrap soon, but I want to definitely touch on auditions. I really like to ask for SAG-AFTRA Foundation. I like to ask about worst audition horror stories. Because we all have them. I also want to say, like, I think maybe some early career actors tend to think that actors on your level who are nominated for awards don't have to audition anymore. But correct me if I'm wrong. Some of you auditioned for these very roles. Can I start with Cynthia?
Yes, I auditioned for the role.
Yes, indeed.
It started with a conversation first, and I think John was sort of like sussing me out, seeing if I was like, if my brain was there, if my mind was ready for it. And then we had another conversation where he sort of asked my opinion on who this character might be and could be and what I felt about the piece. And then I was asked to come in to do a sort of chemistry read, I guess. And I was there I did like a 3-hour sing and read of the script. So I had a few scenes and a few songs to do on a day, and then that was sort of like my intro to finding out whether or not I was going to play this character. But it certainly did not come to me immediately. Yeah.
I think you have to fight for it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you fight for it. You want something, you got to go get it. Because there's a lot of I auditioned for Naked Gun, and with Liam Neeson. I shot that already. That's coming out in the summer. But yeah, I want to audition because I know. I mean, being a part of pop culture can be a blessing and also a little bit of a deficit. So I feel like I'm ready to prove myself. I want to audition. Can't believe I'm even saying that, because I think there's a time where, of course, you don't want to audition. These auditions are crazy now. They're over Zoom, or you're not even in person with people, but that's the way it is. So Bring it on.
Yeah, I just had an audition today that was, 2 hours long. And, Anora was the only role I've ever not had to audition for. But then obviously everything that followed was very difficult and involved lots of research and preparation. But I was going through my Dropbox the other day, looking at the maybe 200 auditions that I have uploaded on there and thinking just about all of just the hours and the weeks spent working on these auditions and memorizing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did all of this. Auditioning is, I always get so nervous auditioning, and then obviously putting together an audition tape is so stressful for me because you fall in love with the character that you're playing for those, however long 10 pages of auditions. I'm in love with that character. And for those 10 pages, I am that character. And you put together this tape and then you just send it off and hope that something sticks with someone. And, for my case, most of the time it didn't. And so I would just have to sort of let it go. But yeah, it was so strange looking through all of those. I felt in my heart like that little twinge of, oh, wow, all of these characters I've played for that short period of time that just exist sort of in a cloud somewhere now.
I would have no hesitation auditioning now or ever. I would like as much certainty as I would hope they would have on the other side. I'll just share quickly, probably though, the most awkward one I ever had to do was almost 8 months pregnant for A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise and Rob Reiner. I mean, that was kind of hilarious. Literally I gave birth 5 days, like a week later, because she came early. And it was, I think Tom seemed really uncomfortable, but for whatever reason, Rob needed reassurance. And I was like, I'm game, let's go. Bring it on. Happy to do it.
Glad he was reassured.
Yeah. But
very glad.
Yeah, I want to say, the landscape for auditioning has really changed.
Yeah.
And in some respects, I have a bit of sadness for how it currently is for young actors, because so much is left on to their responsibility to do, find a scene partner, lighting, tape themselves with often no direction of the character, not having full material.
And sometimes they have the pieces to do all of that. I think,
and not even getting feedback. Sometimes not even getting feedback. And I, in some ways, go, gosh, I feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to be in the room so that they could kind of feel and see me, and I could get direction. And I so wish that there was something for our young actors, because I feel like I learned so much through auditions in my early days of getting that feedback. And I just, I really feel for the challenge. It's not like making it good or bad. It's just it's a different landscape. And, but I really appreciate what has to go into it for, young actors today. And also being left with no feedback unless they get the job. That would be hard. It's like operating in a vacuum.
I really hope that there's still room for being in the room, bringing a person into the room, because there really is no replacement for actually feeling someone's energy and someone's spirit in the room. I know that for practical sake, there's a change to doing it over Zoom or sending in a tape, but I do think that there is something to be gained for everybody to have the time face to face. When I was, because it's the same now for theatre as well.
Wow.
That has also shifted too, which is really just hard when actually the medium is in person. So
and also when it feels like the whole idea is about connection, and that seems so disconnected.
Right. Right. So I totally agree. It is a different way. It's not good or bad, but we lose something if we don't allow actors to come in, especially those who are just beginning, just come in the room and feel what it's like to have feedback. Because that's where the improvement and the change and the shift starts to happen when you get something back. Even if you aren't necessarily right for a role, there's something might happen in that room that goes.
There's like that kind of aliveness that comes when like somebody says, a casting director or a director goes,
right,
try this. And you're like, oh my God, let me try that.
Right.
Let me try that. That feels like so great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different landscape. But, we're planting the seeds now for maybe we could be a part of helping to support a change that supports that opportunity for young people, at the very least, to get response.
Yeah.
To send something into a vacuum also doesn't feel like I to sustain yourself.
Yeah.
A lot, as you were saying, Mikey, like that
200 with
nothing back. It's kind of like, where am I? I mean, I feel like I sold the hell of myself out of myself in the room.
Well, the other thing I love about what you said is that even if it's 10 pages or if it's a very brief role, that the fact that you fall in love with that character, I think that's something that working actors can take a lot out of this whole conversation, is that if you fall in love with your character, even if they're super flawed or it's a super tiny role, and even if you're sending it on a self-tape, fall in love with your character. Thank you all so much for sharing, and thank you for falling in love with these characters, because just me as an audience member, it's just such a joy to see that love on screen, that compassion. And thank you for sharing with each other.
Thank you, Jack.
Sisterhood.
Thank you, ladies. Love seeing you.
Congratulations.
Pleasure.
Bye all.
Bye. Bye.